Yes, yes.
Okay,
Just a second.
no problem, miss.
ओके अच्छा, इसमें अभी तो फिलहाल हम लाइव नहीं है, आई गेस.
Miss, we are about to go live now.
ओके, ठीक है. यस, वी कैन
Uh,
स्टार्ट.
yes, just a second, miss. As soon as you see the live logo, then we can start.
ओके.
Just preparing right now. Just
ओके.
a second.
अच्छा, इसमें जो मोड हम रखेंगे वो प्योर इंग्लिश होगा या वो उर्दू भी हो सकता
Uh,
है?
Miss, it's up to you. You can also make it pure English or Urdu as well. No issue.
ओके, ठीक है. Hello, everyone. I hope you all are in good health and have done with your preparation of ACCA papers. Here we are going to discuss few areas which are really very important for the paper of advanced performance management, and uh, we are going to deal with the basic issues. First of all, let me give you a basic introduction of myself. My name is Zaira, and I've been teaching advanced performance management since around 7 or 8 years. So, first of all, there are few basic points which I would like to cover here. The first and the most important point for APM paper, and probably because of all for all papers, is to complete to cover complete syllabus, because this is something which is really very important, not for APM but for all paper. Now, if you see the passing ratio of APM paper, it's around 32, 33%. And roughly, it usually remains same, 32, 33, 30%. And it's to certain degree consistent with the passing ratio of other professional papers. I believe that why APM paper is kind of nightmare for students is not because it's difficult. APM paper, if you compare its difficulty level with the other papers, it's comparatively it's a easier paper, what I believe. So why students are struggling in this paper? Because they are unable to understand the requirements and they are unable to write it properly. That's basically what I believe. Papers is not important, is not difficult, syllabus is not difficult. It's basically the important point is how to attempt the paper. That is really very important, and that's very challenging in APM. Um, I personally believe that there are few reasons behind it. I will cover those points one by one. The first important point, which I believe, which is a problem for student, is they don't practice a lot. I mean, if you ask a student, if you teach a student something which is calculation, which includes calculations like risk and uncertainty, like a variance calculation, which we did in PM, they used to love it. They really love the calculation part. But when you ask a student to uh, practice the theoretical part, they usually ignore it. They usually say that, look, we know what to write, we know what are the points, so they usually skip it. I personally believe the best way to uh, practice APM practice for APM paper is to write the answers. Now we have computer based examination, so it's a bit easier for students to attempt it, but still I believe if you know, if you have written, if you have practiced all those past papers by writing the answer, I believe it's really it gets easier for student to recall things from what they practice in the paper. So the first and most important point, so the second important point is to write your answer like you are practicing a numerical question. This is personally I believe which is very important. Um, I've discussed so many things. I've discussed with students who attempted this paper 4 times or 5 times and they couldn't pass the paper. And when I asked them what reason you think that is behind their failure, trust me, they don't have any idea why they flunked. I believe that this and majority said that they don't write the answer. They just read the examiner comments and they just read the examination comments and they think that they are done with the preparation. So that's basically what's very important. One another point which is a big reason for failure, which I believe is that students don't understand the requirement, number one, and they don't justify their answer. Justification is really very important. For example, if I'm saying that is economic value added is more important, is a better way to analyze the performance of a company as compared with return on capital employed, then I have to justify that why I am thinking that return on capital employed is not an appropriate way, and why I think that economic value added is more appropriate. What the students usually do is they write EVA shows a long term performance of company and they are done. They think they are done, but practically you have told the examiner that look, this is also a way of measuring the performance, but why you think it shows a long term performance, you haven't you haven't justified your answer. Or for example, a company there is a company who is using absorption costing, and if I ask, if examiner asks that if it should switch to ABC, students say that students don't connect with the scenario. They don't justify that why absorption is relevant in this situation or irrelevant in this situation, and why they should switch to ABC. An examiner is usually concerned about the evaluation part, that why the justification part, that you must justify each and every point whatever you are writing. General discussion of theory, general of theory usually don't give you much marks, or reasonable number of marks, right? uh, then there is one more important point. Now APM paper are contain embedded requirement that has been started in 2000, back to 4 or 5 attempts back. Embedded requirement is usually with 3 or 4 requirements, usually one requirement, and within that requirement there are 2 to 3 requirements. For example, if the CEO wants you to briefly discuss the concept of benchmarking and what type of benchmarking is available, and then ask you to recommend what type of benchmarking is suitable for the organization, then there are, and obviously you have to perform benchmarking exercise as well for the company. So there are 4 requirements: the brief explanation of benchmarking, how many types of benchmarking are available, benchmarking, what type of benchmarking is suitable, you have to justify that, and then benchmarking. So and if you are writing that there are few types of benchmarking, for example competitive benchmarking or internal benchmarking, then still you have to connect it with the scenario. For example, if some information about competitor is given in this scenario, you have to connect it. So everything which you are writing in the paper, you have to justify it, number one, and you have to connect it with the scenario if possible. This is something which is again a problem with the students. Then there is one more point which is important. If a company is using a new concept, this is what I believe is easy marks. If a company is not using uh, let's say if a company is not using value based management, and if now you are CEO has asked you if company should uh, use a value based management. So if some technique is new for a company, you must start your answer with the justification, that what is why, not justification, sorry, with the introduction, that what is the concept of value based management, or what is the concept of benchmarking or sampling, in a very brief discussion. And then there is one more thing, there are two more things in fact. The second last thing which I briefly want to discuss is the question number one, the structure of question number one. Uh, I personally advise students, don't play treasure hunt with the examiner. You have to tell the examiner that this is the answer. So that should be properly structured. It's question number one, especially because that contain professional marks. So it should start with the basic introduction to from date, and then introduction, and then proper headings and subheadings, and there should be a proper manner. There should be a proper uh, layout of that report. Now it's easy because of CB paper, but initially it was also a problem. Then last point, which I believe is really very important, is to understand the term evaluate. I have seen a lot of students who are still not clear with this term. Whenever an evaluate is a examination verb which examiner use quite often. I mean there are a lot of requirements which use this term, the word evaluation. Evaluation means what? Evaluation means 2 points. If you are seeing a scenario and you think that this scenario is the company is doing perfectly fine in this scenario, then you have to justify that why you think that the company is doing right. And the second point is, if you think that the company is not doing right, you have to also justify that why the company is not doing right and what are your recommendations. So I believe evaluate is something is an examination term which usually students miss out in their examination. Apart from all these things, I believe the most important point which I think is I mean, if I conclude this part, so I believe, before taking the questions, I believe the first thing which is the most important in APM paper is to practice your past papers, or whatever. I mean last 4 year past paper at least, by writing the answer, right? And the second point is to build the habit of justifying your comments, justifying your recommendations, justifying of whatever you are writing, because that is something which examiner usually find missing. I mean unable to find in examiner in a student's answer. And do focus on complete syllabus. Don't skip any area. Try to cover as much as possible. Now let's come to the questions, which let me start with few questions. There is a question: what are the most common reasons for failing in the examination? See, as I said, the first reason is that uh, you are unable to justify. The second reason is students are unable to complete the paper. That is also a very important part. If you are practicing your examination paper, try to practice your examination paper within a specific time frame. For example, you have around 180 minutes, rough 180 minutes plus 15 minutes. So on average, one mark require 1.8 minutes, 1.8, 1.85 minutes per mark per mark. So you must practice your answer within that time frame, because if you are unable to attempt 20-mark question or 10-mark question, then 20-mark question or 10-mark question, then obviously you will not be able to get any mark in that phase, right? So it will be difficult for you to pass the paper. And then again, try to understand the requirement and try to answer each and every requirement. But my if I ask, if someone asks me what is the key most crucial thing why student fail, is the justification part. Students don't justify their answers. What are the best sources for exam? The best source is, number one, you have to try to read the complete textbook, because that will provide you the basic knowledge. But again, having said that, if I'm saying that I have read the advantages and disadvantages of activity based costing, it will not help me to pass the paper unless and until I know what are how I can apply the advantages, disadvantages, and the concept for the with the scenario. So if I am unable to connect my theory with the scenario, that book reading won't help me, and that is only possible by practicing the paper. So the first most important thing is to read the study text, number one. Number two, by get all those knowledge, all those information which you are getting from study text, try to practice as many past papers as you can, especially the recent past paper. And uh, again, try to this thing, I don't I always say, but student usually don't prefer this. I mean they don't follow this instruction, but I believe it's really very important to read the newspapers, current whatever scenario is happening currently, because it's a very common thing in ACCA to build to make the scenarios based on current circumstances, whatever is happening in the world. Usually they take those things. For example, if there is some, considering some ethical dilemma, something happened, and they take that part and built in the question, so that can help you. But again, the most important thing is to understand, is to read the exam, is to read the study text, and try to practice as many past papers as you can. Then it says, kindly explain what is the best way of, just a second, probably I missed something. What is the best way of making notes? See, best way of making notes is, uh, I believe it can be, I mean, how can I explain this? See, try to, for example, you have read, for example, you have gone through a topic, right? You studied a topic. For example, you studied what is the sampling and benchmarking, and maybe BCG model, maybe anything, transfer pricing or EVA, whatever. And you have practiced that. You took out a question of economic value added or transfer pricing, and you have practiced that. And if you found, in whatever points you are unable to get in that part, try to not repeat the mistake. But um, I think making a bullet point in terms of specific notes would be important, and in terms of practicing the past paper, it's really very important to not to repeat the mistake. That is very important. Try to identify the mistakes and not to repeat that. What is the best method to clear the exam easily? See, easily is, there's nothing easy in this world, but uh, I must say comfortable way of passing the examination is to practice as many past papers as you can. And one more thing, I forgot. One more thing is very important. That is to understand the marking scheme of examiner. I think most of the students don't consider that. Marking scheme is also a very important area, because if you don't know on what grounds you are getting marks, obviously you will not be able to perform well. Usually it's 1 mark per point, 1 mark or 2 marks per point. So if I'm writing something, for example, 9 marks requirement is there, and there are three requirements, then 3 marks per requirement is there. And one may be the concept of explaining sampling, second can be the sampling methods, third can be the issue of sampling in the current scenario. So that is something, that's something to understand what are the marking scheme. And one more thing you can do is, you may read examiner comments, which is available at ACCA examiner report. So you can identify that what are the common mistakes which students did in a particular question. For example, you tried question number one of uh, March, June 2020, and you attempted it and you compared it with the examiner solution and you figured out few mistakes, right? And then you can take out the marking scheme to check how many points you scored. And then finally, you can read examiner comments to conclude that whether you did the same mistakes which students of that attempt did, or you did something different. So if you did something different, then obviously you are on the safe side. But if you did the same mistakes, then definitely it can be a problem for you. So I believe if you really want to clear it, try to read try to attempt a question, uh, compare it with the examiner solution, check its marking scheme, how many marks you scored, on what grounds examiner is awarding you marks, and the last one is read the examiner comment. So that will give you the basic idea of what student did in that question and what you have done in the same question. And uh, just a second. Um, Then it says, how much time should we give to our studies per day? It all depends when you are starting. When you are starting. I mean, if you are starting now for June attempt, you I believe it's all about your stamina. I think it's more towards your stamina. Sometimes you are in a better position to understand things. So but roughly, I think I'm not sure, but I think 2 hours maybe. But you see, APM is not. I don't believe it's you should make 2 hours per day or 4 hours per day. It should be how many topics you have, how many days you have, how many questions you want to attempt, and make your schedule accordingly. It's always a customized plan. There's no standard plan for it. Um, how to cover lengthy syllabus? Um, okay. How to cover syllabus? What is the cost field 47, 49 marks? How to cover syllabus is basically try to figure out how many topics are there and try to complete all topics. That's really very important. Why students fail at 47 and 49 marks? It's really very painful to flunk at 49 marks, but I believe the main reason for failing at 49 marks is failure to attempt paper properly. It's not about knowledge, I believe. It's more towards to attempt your paper in a better way, to improve paper, improve your answer is a more relevant word, I guess. You need to improve your answer. Knowledge can be a less contributor towards 49 marks. Um, the way you are attempting your paper is a bigger contributor, I believe. Important topics in F5 for preparation. uh, okay, someone is here for F5 as well. um See, F5 is there was a time when there were only 5 questions in F5, so we can question spot in that situation, but now we cannot. It's impossible because see, if I say variances is important, right? So that cover everything. There are MCQs, there are MTQs, there are constructive response questions. So I believe the whole syllabus is important. You cannot leave anything in that case, because that will increase your risk of failure. For F5 especially, because F5 is the kind of paper of the kind of paper structure F5 is, or PM is. That means you examiner can cover anything from book. So I don't believe it's a good idea to question a spot in there. I mean, it's in June 2010 and December 2010. There were two consecutive attempts when there was attempt in where linear programming came in the paper, and students were not attempting linear programming to be in the next attempt, and the majority left linear programming, but that was in the second consecutive paper, and I think in the third consecutive paper as well. So that's something. No, don't go for question spotting, right? And um and there's one more question was how to relieve stress during examination. See, um um I believe, if you don't know anything, if for example, if you have read a question of 10 marks, and you have read a requirement in 10 marks, and you don't know the answer, don't don't get panicked, right? And just move to the next question. You can't do anything for that 10 marks, but you can do so many things for the remaining 90 marks. So I believe, go for the next one. All right. So um, I think we are almost covered all points which I was about to cover. So best of luck to all of you for your paper for March attempt, and I hope, I wish you will pass your examination. You will have a good, you will attempt a paper properly, and you will hopefully pass the paper. Best of luck to all. Thank you.